We're going to do some baking. We're going to make a traditional Polish cake, if you like, or roll. I was asking a friend at work. I said, who's Polish? Any sort of like speciality or anything, you know, any kind of speciality meal that Polish would have, and she sort of listed a few, and one of them was this sort of cake. So I thought, oh, I'll have a go at that. So my pronunciation is probably crap as usual, but I believe it is Sznek Glancem. These are basically a sweet, sugar-coated roll made with a yeast dough. So that's what we're going to make. So we've got to get the yeast on the go. Traditionally, this would be made with fresh yeast, but I'm using dry powdered yeast. I've got 10 grams of that there, and in this bowl we've got some sugar. I've got 105 grams. I've increased the original recipe a bit because I did promise I'd take some into work so that my Polish friends in particular can check them out. She said the trouble is these need to be done or eaten fresh on the day you baked them. Well, she's going to get them tomorrow. And also, obviously, I want some left here for me and the wife, possibly. So in here I've got 105 grams of sugar, and I'm just going to put that yeast in there. And then I've got here 375 mils of lukewarm milk, full fat milk. So we're just going to mix all that in, and then I'm going to put this by for at least 10 minutes. So essentially what we're doing here is making a leaven. So like in bread making, sometimes you make like a starter dough, if you like. So it could be a sourdough that you've added to some of your liquid, or it could just be yeast like this is. So like I say, this is now going to get put by. If you're using fresh yeast, you might have to give it 20 minutes because this is, I know it's not fresh, but it's active yeast. We'll give it at least 10 minutes and we'll see how we get on. And while that's doing that, I'll run through the other ingredients with you. So these Sznek come from a German word, which I'm guessing is pronounced pretty much the same way, Sznek, which is the German word for snail, because we're going to sort of make like a snail shell, a bit like a cinnamon roll in a way, I suppose. And traditionally these are covered in a crumble and then coated with just a simple lemon icing on top. Apparently in times of hardship, when butter wasn't so readily available, it often didn't have the crumble on top. Okay, it just went straight for some kind of sugar icing. But anyway, going back to what I said we're gonna make this dough. So in here, I've got 750 grams of sort of a fine wheat flour. It's not a Polish one, although the recipe I found listed as Polish, and it threw me completely because I thought the word for flour, which I couldn't get translated, turned out to be, it was a brand name with a flour they were recommended. So anyway, I'm using like a French fine grade for sort of patisserie flour. Okay, I've got 750 grams of that. I've got 3 egg yolks. I'm going to add a pinch of salt, and then I've got some melted butter there. I've got 150 grams of that. Okay, and when our leaven is ready, we will mix all this together and we'll make a nice dough. Now to make the crumble, this basically consists of a bit of vanilla essence, sugar, butter again. Now the butter in this case needs to be kept really cold. So I've already measured out my butter, and that's in the fridge. And I've got 135 grams of butter in the fridge. Our sugar, we want 100 grams of that. And we're going to need a little bit more flour, 180 grams of that flour. So that's all measured out. You're going to need another egg at least to do an egg wash. And then ultimately we'll be coating it with an icing sugar mix, but we'll worry about that when we come to that. We don't need to put the oven on just yet. Now, this, according to the recipe I got, said don't do it in a fan oven. Well, we've got a lot of choice because I can't turn my fan oven off. Well, I can, but it's either on with a fan or off completely. And I'm looking to make about 22 buns or cakes or rolls. So I've given it just over 15 minutes, and I've just given it a little stir so it's not so obvious, but it was starting to bubble up. So we're going to add in that butter, the egg yolks, and a little sort of pinch of salt. And then we're going to gradually blend in the leaven, as it were. Now, my friend said, oh, you need a stand mixer for this, you need to have it in a stand mixer, it needs to have a dough hook on it, it needs lots and lots of kneading. But when I sort of looked online for some recipes, to be honest, and in the old days, of course, it would have all had to be done by hand, but the recipe I came across essentially just said knead it by hand. So we're just going to get that all nicely incorporated, and then I'm going to tip that out onto a floured surface, and we're going to start kneading it. Oh, we're just kneading this, and I haven't actually kneaded much flour at the moment, and it's not that sticky anymore once I've got everything incorporated in. So these sort of sweet cakes or sweet rolls sort of are apparently quite a speciality for certain areas of Poland, and this particular one, the Sznek Glancem, sorry, my pronunciation is not very good. The more crumble that we put as the topping, apparently the better. But there's a whole variety of these yeast cakes. Get round ones, we get these ice sweet rolls that we're making, sort of mini cakes, cookies, buttery rolls, donuts, and then fritters. And cakes apparently generally coated with this sweet crumble, which is what this one's going to be. And they might add fruit like apples, pears, plums, berries, I suppose whatever might be in season at the time. So I'm just going to knead this for a little bit longer, then put it in the bowl, cover it over, and we're then just going to leave it in a nice little warm place for 90 minutes. Again, we don't really need to put the oven on at the end of that, because we're going to shape our rolls and let them prove for a little bit, let them rise. And while it's doing that, we'll put the oven on to get that up to temperature. We're looking at around about 160 to 170 with a fan. If you weren't using the fan like the recommended one, it'd be 180. And during that proving and the oven warming up stage, we'll make our crumble. Like I say, you need to keep the butter nice and cold, so we won't get the butter out until we're ready. So, like I say, finished kneading, 90-minute proving. Some 90 minutes later, and I'm just going to divide this in half. And we'll cover that back over that half, because we're obviously not going to bake the whole batch, or won't be able to bake the whole batch in the oven in one go. So this should make up to 30 cookies. So I'm just going to divide this up into equal pieces. So we're going to get about, well, actually it might go for 32, because that makes it easy, doesn't it? So I'm going to divide this half into 16. Actually, I've ended up doing 13. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we now roll it out into a long sausage. I'm going to give it a light twist, and then we curl it up to make this snail shape. Now we're going to do that obviously with every piece, and then they're going to get covered over, and we're going to let them rest for about 15 minutes or so while we'll prepare our crumble. So just roll it out, give it a light little twist, curl it up and place it on the lined baking tray. Now these will probably rise a little bit, so obviously leave a bit of room around them. So that's them all rolled out. I'll put out on baking trays and I'll cover them over, and like I say, we're going to let them prove for about 15 minutes. If you haven't put your oven on by now, make sure it's on and up to temperature. So my crumble mixture, I've got flour, I've got 180 grams of the same flour, and here I've got sugar, I've got 75 grams of that, so that's going in there. And then, so actually I'm just going to get that a quick mix together, and then we take our butter, which I already chopped. Butter, I've got 135 grams of that, that's nice and chilled, in that goes, and using our fingers we're now going to crumb that all in together. Okay, so we've got a fairly coarse crumble. Okay, so because I'm going to have to put my other hand in here, I'm going to turn this off now. So I've made my crumble. It's quite a sort of a lumpy crumble, but that's fine. Okay, and now our next trick is to egg wash the top of each one of these. As a Google Translator said, the sprouted cakes. I think it meant risen. So we're just going to brush these over with the egg wash. I probably could have got away with one egg, to be honest, but I was a bit dubious whether one would be enough, and I've used up two, so I suspect some of this is going to go to waste. So we brush this over the top, and then take our crumble and we liberally, whoops, preferably not big lumps like that, sprinkle crumble over the top, and then these will be ready to go into the oven. And well, like I said, mine's a fan oven and I couldn't turn the fan off. It said normally without a fan 180, about 20-25 minutes baking time, but I think we'll have to wait and see. So as soon as I've got the tray ready, I'm going to whack that in the oven and we'll get cooking it. And you want to cook it till it starts going a nice golden brown colour. So that's our Sznek baked. Okay, I did about 25 minutes, and I think it's because obviously the fan oven, I did have to rotate them round at least halfway through, because one side was cooking, the other side wasn't. But what we can do now is just make our final icing to go on the top. So a little bit doing it by eye, but I've got some icing sugar in here, and I've got about a tablespoon or so of lemon juice, and we're just going to mix that in. Now I think I might have earlier said about how we were going to add some vanilla essence, and I'm not sure if I actually mentioned the vanilla essence. I know when I made the crumble I didn't put it in then, I added it off camera, but I was meant to say to you, by the way, add about a teaspoon or so of vanilla essence to the crumble mix. Now, if you needed to, you'd add a little bit of hot water, okay, but I think I'm going to need to put a little bit more sugar in that, because that's perhaps a little bit too runny. And then what we'll do, we'll drizzle them over the top of the buns, cakes, bread roll. Now, you may have noticed, although I transferred these to wire rack, I left them on the baking paper simply because this is likely to be a bit messy. So we're just going to drizzle icing sugar, or the icing mix as it were, over all these. I will go back over these again and add some more. Okay, but obviously at this stage just want to make sure I have enough to go around, although I can always make some more up, can't I? So I'm just going to finish icing these, and then we'll perhaps have to taste one, won't we? Here we go, here's our final Sznek Glancem, or Glancem, or no. Let's give it a try. This is a little bit of a dinky one. I've got some of me cutting up a little bit. Let's give it. I'm trying to think what it reminds me of. It does remind me of a hot cross bun in terms of texture of that. It's a bit difficult to say it's sweet because obviously you've got the icing sugar on top. But it's bready, but is sweeter than bread. But I'm not quite sure what the appeal of the crumble is on top. Whether perhaps I should put more on. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the bready bit at the bottom that is the main part of it. But anyway, still bloody nice.